Lovely to get a chance to spend a few minutes just talking to you today about some things that are on my mind as a person working in HR right now. Special thanks to Hugo and the team for giving me a chance to share some thoughts and some hopefully some insights and some interesting insights with you. And specifically in the context of, I guess, kind of what I've termed growing pains. And this isn't about a 7-year-old who's going through a massive growth spurt, you'll be pleased to hear, but more about what it feels like from a recent experience that I'm going through of having joined a large scaling organization that is going through growth at a speed of knots. And what does it mean? What is that different from where I came from? And what is it making me think about how we do the job around people and culture, but then also what it's making me think about the function longer term, you know, kind of my reawakening about what is it we're here to do and how do we break a cycle from potentially some kind of stereotypical views of what HR's reason for being is. So a few minutes really just from me about what it's like to be in growth. Things that I want to share, 3 things really, just some impressions, like what is it? I've been so curious around what is it like to be somewhere growing? What does it feel like to be somewhere so young? So just a few impressions from me from the inside. Secondly, what is it starting to make me feel now having spent a 6-month period here? What does it mean about the work that we do? And how do you kind of help build and help grow, but also help people leapfrog as well? And then thirdly, just some bigger takeaways that I've been really thinking about, reflecting on personally about the future of the function and what we do. So I guess really starting with inside a growth engine, what are my impressions? I think the first thing is, surprisingly, where I'm going to start is being somewhere super high growth is that there's tension everywhere, and I say that in a positive way because it really means for me that being somewhere that hasn't quite got it worked out, that there's tension between models and structures and cultures, you know, cultures that people have brought with them and cultures that are forming, and so there's for me, I'm like, where's the physiotherapist? We need somebody here to kind of help kind of massage some of this tension out. But I think being somewhere high growth is the impression is that there's no muscle memory. And so what do you fall back on? Like where do you look? What are some of those kind of rituals that we've probably taken for granted in previous organizations you might have worked that have been more established? Like where and how do you quickly build muscle memory? So for me, it's quite an interesting one where it's like there's a lot of optimism, but there's also a lot of things where it's like, how do I navigate it? There's nobody here with more than 6 months memory. So I think that's a fascinating piece that I've walked into. I think also going somewhere high growth at the scale that it is right now, looking at the future and how you start to engage, and naturally my kind of conversations that I've had in previous roles have been around, talk to me about your pain, talk to me about what you anticipate to be problems in the next 18 months, 24 months, longer. Doing that somewhere high growth, that's probably been the hardest question that I've asked and tried to answer myself, as people's attention is literally on the here and now. So again, going back to how do we break a cycle of looking every couple of months rather than every couple of years, has been a really fascinating challenge of therefore, what do you hook the work on? What do you give people hope and optimism around, and that we're building something that's sustainable and much longer term than just the next few months? And then I think the other impression, and it's probably a no-brainer, is oh my word, these are the biggest laboratories going around. This is kind of, and obviously not wanting to kind of trigger anybody's memories of obviously the recent year and a half, but in terms of a laboratory, for me, it's the experimentation. It's like, this is just one big experiment once you get into a massive scaling growth engine. And so approaching our work as an experiment, for me, feels like one of the most obvious things to be tackling right now. And then my final impression, before I kind of think about, well, what do we do then? What is this? is I take a lot of inspiration from anywhere that I go, and as people will know, my kind of popular culture is probably not as diverse as it should be, and there's one movie that always sticks with me. Very deep, and that's from Frozen. Love it. I think there's so many great messages in there, and one of the things I think is my impression here, and the advice that I give is in the words of Elsa, is sometimes you also need to let things go. And I think joining somewhere as high growth, there are things that we need to just accept, where we put our energy, and where we just need to let some things work through. And I think again that's a journey. That's a journey for me, it's a journey for lots of people. But sometimes it's about what we don't do as much as what we do. So so again, just another impression is the role of how I help people get perspective when everything needs to be done in a growth organization. So for me, that's been 6 months of quite an assault of the senses. But what is it? What's resonating now? What does it mean for being in growth? And I think that there are three things for me that are really standing out at the moment. One is the power of connection. So I think as I think about my job, and kind of looking at kind of the people and the culture experiences that again, the team that we're here to help agitate and create, is how do we keep giving people context, perspective, and connecting them to the why? And that's through repetition. The power of repetition. Sometimes people are like, oh my God, like you say the same thing like every day, David. And for me, I crave context about like, well, why are we doing things? And I think in a high growth where you don't have that muscle memory, for me, one of the jobs with the team is we keep providing, we search out, we're in such privileged positions in a HR function where we get to work with so many people and see so many things that we should be and could be joining the dots for them, and giving people the hook. Where there's no muscle memory, we need to give the hook of the why. And I think, there's been a lot of talk in recent years around purpose and people being more purpose driven. But for me, that's also code for giving something people to react to. People want to know about vision and a roadmap. And so our job for right now in this crazy growth engine is really about creating connections. I think the second thing that's quite an assault for the senses too when you join somewhere like this is when you're in high growth, is about inclusion. And again, I know that obviously this is front and center for everybody that works in the industry, but inclusion's never more important, particularly when, again, everybody's new in an organization, everybody's looking for again, personal connections, building personal relationships, but everybody's got their own stories. And so again, we've got cultures clashing already, meeting people, East versus West, West versus East. So for me, inclusion and helping people feel a sense of belonging is the second part of what it means and the job. And then the third thing is about energy, sustaining energy. How are we helping people build stamina, and this isn't about 24/7 working. This is about smart, efficient, and as I said earlier, for me, it's about what we're not going to do. So again, that's how I'm translating these impressions in high growth. But in terms of the how and the work and what I feel, when you're doing HR in somewhere that's accelerating like this, is I think there's a couple of other like tactics or techniques that I'm testing out right now. One is as I term it, is my ticket to entry, and recognizing that and many people in the world of search will say this to us as we look at joining organizations in high growth and scaling, is that we need to build basics, and 100% that is what the job is right now for me. But that's not going to sustain me personally, but also help an organization anticipate and prepare for the future. So for me, the balance of build basics, but as I'm terming now, is what do we do to move the needle? And so the basics are my ticket to entry, building new frameworks, building new policies, processes, structures, creating new benefits programs, all needed, all foundational. but that's the permission to then go and experiment, and look at something that, you know, people might be thinking about in 18 months time, certain provocations that they're not feeling open or able to respond to, and so what can we do in our own function to kind of test and experiment and innovate, and I think for me that the how and my big bet right now in terms of being in HR in high growth, is actually how we adopt a design thinking approach to our world. Again, is this new to most people? Probably not. But for me, this is probably the one key kind of capability that I'm personally honing and have been honing for a few years now, but also in the teams that I work with and I lead, is that we need new ways of solving knotty problems. There's never more an abundance of knotty problems in a scaling business, and so how do we do something new, but you know, not just take what we've done in previous organizations? And for me, the key to this is the adoption of a very structured design thinking. That's where innovation comes from, is structure. So you know, what I feel very passionate about, and if you ever get the chance to do this and join growth, you know, it's never an opportunity to miss. And so don't waste the opportunity of being able to write your own rules, create something new. And what I'm learning is that people respond well to the idea of an experiment. That's how I'm tackling this. This is where I'm going with it, is that, you know, if things don't work, that's okay, because it was an experiment, and that, you know, we're in one big one right now, but equally we can create lots of mini ones to start to do something new and break the cycle of we're not just here to manage the day to day. And I think, as Jordan, a previous speaker, has said as well, like we need to kind of, again, we still need to break this kind of perception of us as being kind of subservient, process-led, process police people. And for me, that's my big bet. That's my big bet of going through these growing pains and coming out the other side. So again, what's in my head? 6 months in, being somewhere, scaling, what can I share with you? I hope that's a little bit of what it's like, how I'm thinking about it, how I'm approaching it. But, you know, I still feel super privileged. That's all I say, that when I get to do this job, when I get to work with all these people, that I think it's a real honor at times that we get trusted to be the agitators and the creators and you know, kind of custodians of culture at times. So for me, you know, the big things that I leave with every day is, you know, what's going to keep sustaining us is experimenting, but also in that is the power of curiosity. We need to continue to be curious. I need to keep being curious. I probably need to broaden my horizons beyond Disney films as well, for inspiration. But we need to keep asking. And I think right now, you know, is I'm more motivated than ever in terms of what can be done and how we can do it. And specifically kind of when there's no predefined path anymore, like everything in these last year and a half has been thrown in the air. And so it's a perfect storm for us all to do something differently. So if there's anything I can encourage people to do is embrace the vagueness, the ambiguity, think about it as a massive experiment, but build some structure in there and have fun. I think that's where I'm at right now with my world of HR is being able to have fun in new kinds of work and surprising and delighting people. So they are the ramblings of somebody in high growth right now, going through some very personal growing pains. But I encourage you to reach out, have a chat. More than happy to keep talking about this and share some specific lessons of the last few years as well in the world of innovation. So enjoy. Thank our lucky stars and keep smiling. Thanks.